The forest held its breath. No wind, no birds, no sound at all, just snow falling in slow, heavy flakes, and the kind of silence that made even an alpha doubt his own senses. King Thorn Valen stood in the middle of the frozen clearing, chest bare, steam rising off his skin in thin white ribbons. His boots sank into the snow with a soft crunch that felt too loud in the quiet. Something was wrong. Deeply, terribly wrong. His pups were gone. 3 tiny lives. Barely a moon old. His heart, his entire legacy, snatched out of the royal den without a sound. You could feel the panic vibrating off him like heat. His warriors stood behind him, wide-eyed, waiting for orders they were terrified to hear. Thorn didn't speak. He didn't need to. The fury in his eyes said enough. He moved, fast, dropping into a crouch beside, fingers brushing the disturbed snow, searching for scent, for prints, for anything at all. Nothing. No trail, no intruder scent, no sign of struggle. Just emptiness. A hollow void where warmth used to be. His jaw clenched until it cracked. Someone had taken them. Someone had slipped past the guards. Someone had crossed a warded den. That wasn't just treason. That was suicide. Thorn rose slowly, his breath shaking in the cold. Snowflakes gathered in his dark hair, melting instantly against the heat of his anger. "Fan out," he growled. His voice wasn't loud, but every wolf flinched. This wasn't an alpha giving orders. This was a father whose world had just been ripped open. The warriors shifted immediately, fur bursting through skin, bones snapping and reshaping. They took off into the trees like shadows. But Thorn didn't shift. Not yet. Something tugged at him. A feeling. A thread. Like instinct whispering from somewhere beyond reason. He turned toward the northern ridge. Nothing was visible there. Just endless trees, snow, moonlight. Still, something called to him. A scent. So faint he almost missed it. Human, fresh, warm, soft, wrong, out of place. Impossible. Thorn inhaled again, slower this time. And that's when his heart stopped. Because the scent wasn't just human. It was familiar. A memory he'd tried to bury. A ghost he thought he'd never smell again. Her. He shifted without another thought, fur exploding across his skin as his body expanded into a massive black wolf. He ran, paws pounding into the snow, leaving deep imprints behind him. The forest blurred. Trees whipped by. Cold air sliced across his fur. Every breath burned. And yet, something pulsed ahead of him. A heartbeat. No. 3 heartbeats. 4. His pups. And 1 human. But not just any human. The one he'd been forced to exile. The healer who'd once saved his life. Then been accused of betraying the crown. Branded a liar. Banished beyond the borders. Left to die. Rhea. She wasn't supposed to be here. She wasn't supposed to be alive. Yet the scent grew stronger, warmer, closer. He shifted mid-run, bones cracking, fur folding back into skin, boots barely forming beneath his feet as he stumbled into human form. He pushed through the last wall of pines, and then he saw her. She lay curled in the snow like a fallen star, cloak tattered, hair tangled, lips blue, body trembling from cold and exhaustion. But she wasn't alone. 3 tiny wolf pups were tucked against her chest, wrapped beneath her arms as if she'd been shielding them from the cold with her own body. His heart slammed against his ribs so hard it hurt. There they were, his children, alive, warm, breathing, because of her. Thorn stepped forward, slow, terrified to break the moment. Rhea's eyes fluttered open. Brown, soft, familiar eyes. eyes he'd told himself he'd never see again. She whispered, voice faint and cracked. They were freezing. Her arms tightened around the pups as if she expected someone to rip them from her. He couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. He'd imagined their reunion 1,000 times. He'd imagined anger, accusation, resentment. But not this. Not her lying half dead in the snow, saving the only things he had left in this world. A lump rose in his throat. He reached toward her, and one of the pups whimpered, not toward him, toward her, like she was safety, like she was home. Thorn froze, his chest filled with something sharp and disorienting. This wasn't normal. This wasn't possible. Wolf pups didn't bond with outsiders, especially not exiles, especially not humans. But the pups, they burrowed deeper into her warmth, nuzzled her neck, tucked their noses beneath her chin, as if they belonged to her, as if they recognized her, as if she were... No. He couldn't think it. Not yet. But the truth pulsed in the air around them, ancient, dangerous, forbidden. Rhea looked up at him again, exhaustion pulling at her features. You can take them, she whispered. Just be gentle. They're tired. Thorn knelt beside her slowly. Snow crunched under his weight. His hands shook. Not from the cold. From the realization that the woman he'd rejected, the woman he'd cast into the wilderness, the woman he'd condemned, had saved his children when no one else could. Something inside him cracked, softly, quietly, devastatingly. He reached out, not for the pups, for her. And that's when the first howl rose behind him. Wolves approaching, warriors, the council, witnesses. This moment wouldn't stay private. This truth wouldn't stay quiet. And the storm waiting on the other side of this clearing would change everything. Tell me, where are you watching from? And don't forget to like and subscribe. You're going to want to see what happens when the Alpha King takes her home. The pup stirred first, a soft, broken whimper, the kind that clawed its way into a father's heart and refused to let go. Thorn's fingers hovered inches above the child's pale fur. Lyric, his second daughter, the smallest, the one who hadn't cried once since the day she was born. Until now. But she didn't cry out in pain. She cried when he reached for her, and calmed the moment Rhea shifted closer, arms still trembling, body shielding them like she was born for it. Thorn froze. Lyric's tiny nose nuzzled Rhea's skin. A sigh. Then sleep. The king of wolves, the most feared alpha in the northern ranges, didn't know what to do with his hands. This woman, this human, who should have died months ago in exile, had his children pressed against her chest like they'd never known another. He looked at Rhea, really looked. Her cheeks were cracked from windburn, her lips pale, her nails bruised from clawing through ice, her cloak torn open, barely covering her frame. She was shivering, on the edge of collapse, but her grip on the pups was firm, protective, fierce. Thorn crouched beside her in the snow, still silent, still trying to breathe. How long? He asked, his voice low, almost gentler than he meant. She blinked slowly, dazed. Since the river. Who brought them to you? No one, she whispered. I heard them crying in the water. They were half submerged, shaking. I thought, her voice cracked. I thought they'd die if I waited. He stared. She'd dragged them from the freezing river, alone, carried them through warded forest, crossed a death line, on foot, with nothing but her cloak and stubbornness. She should have frozen first, but she didn't, because she wouldn't stop holding them. "You crossed the border," he said. It wasn't an accusation. Not really. "I didn't think about borders," she said, coughing lightly. "I thought about babies." Thorne's chest clenched. They'd called her a traitor, a liar, said she'd betrayed the pack. The council had demanded her exile. He'd signed the order, and yet she'd risked death to save the very bloodline that exiled her. "I didn't know they were yours," she added, softer now. "Not until they shifted. I just saw wolves. Too small. Too quiet." She looked down. "And I couldn't leave them." The pups had shifted mid-rescue. That explained the silence, the disorientation. Their scent had changed. Their voices vanished. That's why no one heard them. Thorne swallowed hard. Rhea wasn't looking at him anymore. Her gaze was somewhere distant, glassy. "They were so cold," she whispered. "I didn't know what else to do. My magic, what's left of it, wasn't strong enough. So I did what I could. Body heat, skin to skin." Her voice cracked again, and she looked at him with something sharp in her eyes, not defiance, shame. "I know what you all think of me, what they say. I didn't save them to earn back anything. You don't owe me. I didn't do it for—" "They're alive," he said, cutting her off, but gently. "Because of you." Rhea said nothing. Snow kept falling, and the weight between them grew heavier. His pups were alive, but his world was off its axis, because something ancient was stirring, something older than blood, older than rank, a bond. Thorne had seen it before, long ago in stories passed down by the oldest wolves, the first tether, when pups chose their heart guardian, not always their birth mother, not always a wolf, just someone, safe, chosen, rare, dangerous, sacred, and irreversible. The council would never allow it, especially not with her. "You shouldn't have crossed," he said again. But this time, there was no threat in it. Rhea's mouth twitched into the ghost of a smile. "I think that ship sailed when I pulled them out of the river." She tried to move, but her arms shook violently. He reached instinctively, hand brushing her shoulder. Her skin burned, too hot for someone that cold. "Fever's coming," he muttered. She didn't argue, didn't complain, just tightened her grip around the pups. "I'm not letting go," she said. "Not until they're safe." "They are now," he said. She blinked at him. "Are they? You sure about that?" That stopped him cold, because he wasn't. Not really. Not with the council. Not with the Luna. Not with the rules that had already damned her once. He looked down at her again, this woman shaking in the snow with the weight of his children in her arms. "I'll carry you," he said quietly. "We'll go to the den. You need heat, medicine. And he paused. "They need you." She didn't reply, but she didn't fight him either. That was enough. He wrapped his arms around her gently, careful not to jostle the pups. One of them stirred, Corin, and gave a little grunt before curling deeper into her chest. She was half conscious by the time he reached the tree line. His second-in-command appeared in wolf form first, shifting fast into a tall man with silver-shot hair and a deep scar down his cheek. "Alpha?" Fenrick's voice was tight, alert. Thorne didn't slow. "Find a bed," he said. "Warm. Isolate us." Fenrick glanced at the woman in his arms. Recognition flared in his eyes. Then, fear. "Her?" he said. Thorne's voice was ice. "She saved my pups. She's an exile. She's their tether." Silence. And then, "The Luna will hear of this. She already has." Behind them, the wolves began to stir. The scent of judgment was already in the air. But ahead? Ahead was the den, the fire, the confrontation, and a secret he'd never be able to bury again. Because the moment she crossed that threshold, everything would burn. Rhea didn't wake in a bed. She woke to heat, flickering firelight, something soft beneath her, something heavy across her legs. And silence. Too much of it. Her heart kicked against her ribs. Then a weight shifted against her chest and everything came rushing back. Tiny paws, cold water, the river, the Alpha King's eyes. She opened her arms on instinct. They were still there, all 3 pups, sleeping soundly. Nestled into the thick blanket someone had thrown over them, one suckled softly in a dream. Another twitched his ears. The third gave a small, sleepy growl that sounded more like a purr. She couldn't stop the tears. They burned, quiet, warm. Not from pain. Not this time. From the overwhelming, impossible fact that they were alive, safe, breathing, and somehow they still clung to her, even after everything. A door creaked behind her, heavy, ornate. She didn't turn. She already knew who it was. She could feel him before he spoke. "Your fever broke," Thorn said quietly. "Sometime in the night." Rhea didn't answer. She didn't trust her voice. He stepped closer, boots scuffing against stone. No armor, no cloak, just his voice, low and unreadable. "You've slept for nearly half a day." She touched the soft fur of the smallest pup, lyric bright, if she remembered right. Her tiny body was curled under Rhea's arm like she'd grown there. "I shouldn't be here," Rhea murmured, more to herself than to him. "You are," Thorn said. "They'll come." "They already have." Her spine stiffened. "The Luna?" "Not yet." Rhea finally looked up. Thorn stood across the room, near the fire, arms folded across his bare chest. Moonlight cut across his face in sharp lines. His eyes were unreadable, but not cold, not like before. "You should take them," she said, voice hoarse. "They belong here, not with me. They chose you." His voice didn't waver, not even a little. She shook her head. "They're pups. They don't know what they're doing." "They do," he said. "More than you think." Silence stretched, crackling fire, steady breathing. He took another step forward. "There's an old law," he said. "From before the separation, before the councils, before Luna bonds and blood contracts." She didn't interrupt. She just listened. "When a pup chooses someone outside the den, outside the pack, without instruction, without scent training, the magic marks them. The bond becomes sacred." Rhea's breath caught. "You're saying they marked me?" Thorn's gaze held hers. "I'm saying they recognized you." She looked down again. One of the pups stirred, paw pressed over her collarbone like a promise. "I didn't mean to," she whispered. "I didn't even know who they were. I just saw them." "You didn't need to mean it," he said. "That's the point." A lump rose in her throat. She blinked hard. "I didn't ask for this." "I know," she laughed, short and sharp, full of nerves. "The last time I saw you, you told me I was dead to the pack. Now you're quoting ancient lore and standing by the fire like some brooding prophecy." His lips twitched, a breath away from a smile. "I never meant for you to be exiled. You signed the order. I didn't write the lie." There it was, the thing between them, heavy, wounded, still bleeding. Rhea closed her eyes. She hadn't cried when they'd cast her out, not when the gates slammed shut, not even when her magic failed her. But hearing that broke something small inside her, something she hadn't realized she was still holding. "I would have died for for this pack," she whispered. "They left me in the dark, like I was nothing." "You aren't nothing," he said, too fast. "Not to me." Rhea looked at him then, really looked, and saw it. Not just guilt, not just regret, but something older, something deeper, something he had buried long before she'd left. "You knew the truth," she said softly. Even then, he didn't deny it, didn't look away, and that was the answer she needed. Rhea sat up slowly, careful not to disturb the pups. Her body ached, but the fever had eased. She could breathe again, think again. "What happens now?" she asked. Thorn's jaw tightened. "I bring this to the council. They'll kill me." "They won't touch you," he said, stepping forward again. "Not while I still breathe." "You're risking everything," she said. "For me." "For them," he said, nodding at the pups. "And yes, for you." Another silence passed between them, but it wasn't cold. It wasn't broken. Rhea touched the pups gently, brushing a curl from one of their tiny ears. They didn't stir. "I'm not strong enough for this fight," she said. "You already fought it," Thorn said. "In the river. In the woods. When you carried them through a storm and didn't let go." She didn't speak, because deep down, she knew he was right. She had fought and won. But the real war was still ahead, because when the Luna found out what had happened, when the council realized the bond was sealed by instinct, when the pack saw the Alpha King standing next to a human with his heirs at her side, the wolves wouldn't howl in celebration. They would come for blood, and not all of them would ask questions first. But none of that had happened yet. Not yet. And in the stillness of the room, with the fire crackling and moonlight watching through the carved stone window, the Alpha and the healer sat in silence, waiting for the sound of footsteps that would change everything. The doors slammed open like thunder. Rhea flinched, instinct tightening every muscle. She had exactly 2 seconds to stand before half a dozen wolves filled the chamber, some in human form, others shifting mid-step, armor clattering, eyes wild. The scent of challenge hit the room like iron. Fenric entered first, sharp-eyed and silent. His gaze cut straight to Thorn, then to her, then back again. The others hesitated at the threshold, unsure whether they were stepping into a fight or a scandal. Thorn didn't flinch. He stood calmly at the center of the space, tall, bare-chested, unapologetic. Behind him, Rhea held the pups tighter. One whimpered in her arms. She soothed him with gentle fingers, heart hammering. A moment of silence. Then, "Alpha," Fenric said, "you summoned the High Council?" "I did." Rhea's stomach turned. "So soon?" "I sent word the moment the pups were confirmed safe." Fenric's gaze sharpened. "You didn't mention she was here." "I didn't have to." Thorn's voice was like ice over flame. "They're bonded." The warriors shifted. Some murmured under their breath. Disbelief. Suspicion. A few stepped closer, drawn by instinct. Others recoiled. Rhea could feel it, the air. It was changing. From confusion to judgment. From restraint to threat. A low growl vibrated from the back of the room. Then came the unmistakable voice. Controlled. Elegant. Razor sharp. "Well," said Luna Isolde, stepping into view, her white robes swirling like storm clouds. "Isn't this a surprise?" Rhea's breath caught. The Luna was taller than she remembered. Not physically, but in presence. Cold beauty wrapped in centuries of tradition. Hair braided in silver coils. Neck heavy with tokens of lineage. A creature raised to rule. not love. Isolde's gaze fell on Rhea like a blade. You, she said simply, not a question, a verdict. Rhea didn't speak, didn't rise. The pups in her arms began to shift, their tiny bodies squirming in discomfort. Watch your tone, Thorn warned, but Isolde smiled, and it was a dangerous thing. My tone? She echoed. You bring a traitor into the heart of the den. Let her hold what's mine, and question my tone? They're not yours, Rhea said quietly. It wasn't loud. It wasn't shouted, but it silenced the room. Thorn's head snapped toward her, not in shock, but in warning. Too late. Isolde turned slowly, her smile gone. Excuse me? They never came to you, Rhea whispered. Not once. Not when they cried. Not when they were cold. Not when they nearly died. She looked down at the pups. They blinked back at her with those same golden eyes. Familiar. Trusting. They came to me. The Luna took a step forward. Thorn blocked her path instantly. Don't, he said, voice low and dangerous. Isolde looked at him, not as her mate, but as her obstacle. You forget your duty, she said coldly. You forget what the council gave you, what I gave you. I never asked for any of it. The room inhaled. That wasn't just rebellion. That was rejection. Thorn kept his gaze steady. She's not a traitor, he said. She's their bond, their protector, and she stays. Laws are not stronger than instinct. Isolde's composure cracked, barely. A flicker in her jaw, a tremble of fury beneath her skin. But she held. Then bring her to the council, she snapped. Let the elders decide. Let them see what happens when an alpha loses his mind to a human's touch. Hours later, the great hall echoed with the sound of old power, stone walls wrapped in centuries of law. Elders lined the perimeter, all of them cloaked in silence, faces carved from bone and memory. Most were male, 2 were female. All of them were wolves older than time, older than the war that banished humans from packlands. Rhea stood alone near the hearth, cloaked in borrowed wool. The pups were gone, taken by Thorn's order, placed under guard for safety. She felt empty without them, like someone had cut off her arms. Across from her, Isolde stood with a crown of frost on her brow, voice echoing as she addressed the elders. She violated sacred territory, entered the den uninvited, touched royal blood without consent. The law is clear, exile or execution. Some nodded, others remained still. She didn't invade, Thorn said calmly. She saved them. She bonded them, Isolde snapped. That's worse. Elder Corvin, ancient and blind, raised a skeletal hand. And if she did not mean to bond them? Isolde scoffed. Ignorance isn't innocence. Thorn stepped forward. She crossed the river with 3 half-shifted pups in her arms, dying from exposure. She did it alone, while the rest of us were still searching. He paused. She's the reason they're breathing. A long silence. Then Elder Myra spoke. Her voice was dry, but not unkind. Girl, she said, looking at Rhea. Why did you save them? Rhea swallowed. Her mouth was dry. Her legs trembled. I heard them crying, she said. I didn't know who they were. Just babies. Freezing. Afraid. I couldn't leave them. You understand what this bond means? Rhea nodded. Now, yes. And you still touch them? I held them, she whispered, because no one else did. That quiet sentence fell over the hall like snowfall. Even Isolde went still. Myra sat back. The oldest wolf in the room closed his eyes, and the fire burned lower. Behind the elders, a door opened. A howl echoed, then a soft, high-pitched whimper. Rhea's heart stopped. She knew that sound. She turned on instinct, and saw him. Corin, the boldest, the first to cry. He was squirming in a warrior's arms, pawing at the air, searching for her. The warrior stopped at a nod from Myra, lowered the pup to the stone. He bolted forward, tiny paws clicking against the floor, and crashed into Rhea's legs with a sound that shattered the silence. She dropped to her knees. He climbed into her arms and howled, high, loud, demanding. Rhea looked up. Not one word spoken, not one law recited, just the echo of a pup choosing his mother. The elders didn't speak again for a long time, but something shifted in that moment, not in the law, in the room, and deep beneath the stone floor something old stirred awake. He found her in the moon garden, not because she called for him, not because she needed him, but because he could feel it. Rhea was unraveling. She sat on the stone bench like a shadow, her back to the carved fountain, steam curling from her fingertips in the cold night air. The pups were sleeping. Finally. Fenric stood guard near the nursery wing. No one had dared to question the council's decision yet. Not aloud. But they would. Thorn could sell it in the hallways, in the silences, the held breaths, the half-finished sentences behind closed doors. She didn't turn when he approached. "You didn't come to the hall," she said, voice flat. "I was with the elders after the vote." "That wasn't a vote." Her voice cracked. "That was a mercy." He exhaled, standing behind her, unsure if he should sit, unsure if he was welcome. "They could have turned on you," she whispered. "On me, on the pups. All it would have taken was one of them to challenge." "They didn't." She looked over her shoulder at him. Her eyes were darker than usual, tired, hurt. "No, they didn't. But they didn't welcome me either, did they? They didn't say I belonged. They didn't have to." She shook her head. "Thorn, they didn't even look at me like I was real. Just a mistake they didn't want to own." He didn't argue. He couldn't, because part of him had felt it too. That chill in the room, that quiet belief that if she hadn't bonded with the pups, she wouldn't be standing here now. If she hadn't saved his bloodline, she'd still be in exile, or buried under snow. He sat beside her finally, not close, not touching. "I know what they think," he said, "and I know what they fear." She glanced sideways. "And what do you fear?" His throat tightened. "I fear I listened to them too long. And when I finally saw you clearly, it was too late to undo what I'd done." The words sat between them like frost. Rhea blinked fast. He looked at her, really looked. She hadn't braided her hair. It fell in tangled waves across her shoulders. Her healer's hands were still red from washing the pups. Her boots were muddy. Her cloak was a borrowed one from the den mothers. And somehow she looked more royal than the Luna ever had. Thorn leaned forward, elbows on his knees, staring at the moonlight dancing over the fountain. "I didn't believe it when I saw them in your arms," he said. "Part of me thought it was a trick, that maybe you'd stolen them, or lured them somehow, that maybe it was some old magic twisting them to your scent." She didn't react. "I was scared," he added. That made her head turn. "You?" she asked, voice soft. He nodded once. "I knew what it meant, the moment they chose you, the moment I saw Corin howl for you like you were his only anchor." He swallowed hard. "I knew there would be no going back." Silence. Just the wind whispering through dead leaves. "And still you stood with me," she said. "I didn't stand with you," he said. "I knelt at your feet, in front of the council, in front of her." Rhea's face flickered. "You mean the Luna?" He nodded. "She saw it. The way I looked at you. The way they looked at you. And she told me she wouldn't fight it. Ria's eyebrows lifted. That doesn't sound like her. It isn't. He hesitated. She never wanted the pups. Not really. Not after the second miscarriage. I think she accepted the bond for power, not love. And when they came, when they cried, she didn't hold them. Not once. Ria's hand went to her heart. A quiet, unconscious motion. Protective. Instinctive. She said nothing during the council's ruling, Thorne said. And then she left. No fight, no blood, no challenge. She removed the crescent bond ring herself. She stepped aside? She knew it was already over. Ria looked away. That's not nothing, she murmured. To let go like that. No, Thorne said quietly. It's not. They sat in silence again. And then she said the one thing he wasn't ready for. I should leave. His body snapped still. What? Ria turned her body slightly to face him now. Her expression was unreadable, but her eyes... Gods, her eyes were breaking. They won't accept me, she said. Not fully, not openly. The council only tolerates me because the pups tethered. The minute they're older, stronger, they'll push me out again. I won't let them. It won't matter, he shook his head. I'll protect you. You can't protect me from hate, she said softly. Not all of it, and not forever. The words were a dagger, precise, painful, true. He opened his mouth to argue, but stopped, because she was right. There were still wolves who'd slit her throat in the dark, still elders who'd rather break tradition than admit she belonged. I'm not running, she said, but I need to breathe, to think. I have a sister in the southern range. She's ill. She needs me. The guilt twisted his gut. How long? He asked. A few days, maybe a week. And the pups? I won't take them. I wouldn't. They won't let you leave without them, he said. They'll howl until they find you. I'll go quietly, she whispered. He closed his eyes. He didn't want her to go, not even for a second, not even for the right reasons. But he nodded, because part of loving someone was knowing when not to hold too tightly. When you come back, he said, everything will be different. Will it? I'll make sure of it. Ria stood slowly, pressing her hand over his where it rested on the bench. Just for a moment, just enough to say what neither of them could speak aloud. Then she walked away. And the moonlight followed her. That night the pack heard no howls, but somewhere deep in the forest, a whisper spread like wildfire. The human girl was gone. The pups were crying, and the alpha's heart wasn't where it used to be. The pack was gathering before the sun rose. No drums, no horns, just word of mouth, just tension thick in the air. By dawn, the ceremonial grove was already full. Elders took their stone seats. Warriors stood on the outer ring. Den mothers, messengers, and a few bold bloodline heirs lined the hill, all of them quiet, alert, waiting. The moon was still faint in the sky, pale silver behind a veil of thin clouds, like even it was holding its breath. Thorne stood near the center, alone, cloaked in royal black, hands at his sides, back straight, eyes unreadable. He hadn't slept, not since Ria left. The pups had cried for hours the night she was gone, not like newborns, like wolves mourning something they couldn't understand. He had carried them himself into the ritual circle this morning, one in each arm, the third wrapped against his chest. They were sleeping now, bundled in the ceremonial cradle woven with healing vines and spirit stones. They hadn't whined once since arriving. But Thorne knew what came next. The council was calling for a final ruling, not just on Ria, on him, on the bond, on the very meaning of what made a wolf's blood sacred. He could feel the eyes, the pressure, the split down the spine of his pack. Some stood with him silently, others held their breaths, praying he'd fall. Elder Myra was the first to speak. "We gather under the eye of the moon," she said, her voice echoing through the grove, "to judge what was never meant to be judged." No one spoke. Even the birds held back. She turned her face to the crowd. A healer, a human, an exile. She crossed the warded border, carried the heirs of the Alpha King. And now, the pups have bonded. She looked down at the cradle. The smallest one, Lyric, twitched in her sleep. "They have chosen," Myra said, softer now. "But will we?" The words rippled through the circle. Beside Myra, Elder Corvin straightened in his seat. His blind eyes gleamed with moonlight. "There is precedent," he rasped. "In the old texts, when a tether is formed outside the bloodline, the bond cannot be broken." "Precedent," Isolde hissed from across the circle, "does not mean acceptance." The Luna's voice was low, sharp. She had not spoken much since the last gathering, but this time she stood. Draped in wolf white, head high, she stepped forward. "The Alpha King has embarrassed us," she said. "Publicly, spiritually, he has chosen a human over the Luna bond." A few murmurs rose. Some heads nodded. Others stayed very, very still. "She has bewitched the heirs," Isolde continued, voice swelling. "She trespassed. She disrespected pack law. And now, because she shielded them with her body, we pretend it is the will of the moon?" Thorn's jaw flexed. "They didn't just cry for her," he said, voice like granite. "They recognized her. They haven't eaten properly since she left. They barely sleep." "Pups cry," she snapped. "They cry for her." Silence. The tension in the grove rose like storm clouds. Isolde looked around the circle, hands spread like she was calling on history itself. "Do you know what this will mean?" she said. "If we allow this, if we accept a human as the bonded mother of our royal bloodline," she paused, "they'll mate her, mark her, breed with her. And what happens then? What will our children look like? A generation from now? What power will they hold? Or lose?" A long silence. Then a voice called from the back, high, feminine, nervous. "But what if they're stronger?" Heads turned. A den mother stood there, clutching a bundle against her chest. She was young. Her voice shook, but her gaze was steady. "My daughter's bonded too," she said. "Not to her birth mother, but to her aunt. We didn't understand it at first. We tried to separate them. It made her sick. Nearly killed her." She stepped forward slowly. Every eye followed her. "When we let them stay together, she healed." The woman swallowed. "The bond is real. We've known this for years. We just never said it aloud." The ripple of reaction was instant. A murmur of old secrets, quiet nods, a truth unspoken, but never truly hidden. Thorn felt it, the shift, the weight cracking, just slightly. Isolde saw it too. Her face changed. She turned toward Myra, a final act of control in her posture. "You know this cannot stand." Myra stood, tall, weathered, steady. "I know only this," she said. "A pup knows its keeper." She looked to the cradle. Corin stirred, as if on cue. The elders began to rise. One by one, each moved to the fire, tossed a token in, silver for approval, black for denial, no speeches, no debates, just action. 1, 2, 3. The fire snapped, caught. 4, 5, 6. The air grew hotter, tighter. 7, 8, then 9. Final. Myra stepped forward, pulled a carved wolf's tooth from the flame, held it high. "Let it be known," she said, voice deep and steady, "that the bond is acknowledged. The mother is claimed. The Alpha's choice stands." Thorn exhaled. It was done. But as the crowd began to shift, voices rising in reaction, some shocked, some pleased, some furious, he turned toward the trees. Something was wrong. The pups were restless. One of them gave a soft, low whimper. He moved quickly, stepping toward the cradle, heart hammering. They weren't in danger. But something was missing. He felt it in his bones, in their bond. Something had changed. Corin opened his golden eyes and whimpered again, not from pain, from absence, and somewhere far beyond the den, on the edge of pack territory, a scent caught in the wind, familiar, sharp, fading, blood, and not just anyone's, hers. Blood on snow always looks black under moonlight. Thorn ran. Faster than his mind could keep up. The scent was hers, Rhea's, and it cut through the air like glass. Sharp, metallic, wrong. He didn't wait for a tracker, didn't wait for Fenric. He shifted mid-stride, paws slamming into the frozen ground, eyes glowing, breath coming in heavy bursts. The moment the council ruling ended, the pups had stirred. Not crying, howling, all three, at once, not from hunger, not from fear, from something deeper, from loss. The tether was fraying, and now her blood was on the wind. He found the trail beyond the tree line past the southern slope. Snow disturbed, branches snapped, a fight. Someone had followed her. She'd never made it to her sister. She never left the border. Thorn shifted back without slowing, breath visible in hard, short bursts. A torn scrap of her cloak fluttered on a low branch. He snatched it, still warm. Then, a groan, barely audible, low to the ground. He veered left, heart slamming harder than his boots. And there, beneath a half-fallen pine, Rhea collapsed in the snow. One hand over her side soaked in blood, the other bracing against the roots, still breathing, barely. He dropped to his knees, didn't speak, just gathered her gently, arms cradling her as if she were made of glass. "Don't move," he said low, voice shaking. Her eyes fluttered, dazed, clouded. "Trap," she whispered. "They knew I'd leave alone." "Who?" But she was already losing consciousness. He pressed his hand over the wound. Too much blood. Too fast. Magic. Poisoned steel. This wasn't a warning. It was an execution, and he knew who had ordered it. Back in the den, panic exploded the moment he crossed the threshold. Fenric moved to take her. Thorn growled. "No one touches her but me." He carried her through the lower corridor straight into the healer's wing. The pups were already there, restless, agitated, eyes tracking his every movement. As soon as Rhea entered the room, they stilled. Even in pain, even unconscious, she calmed them. A healer rushed to her side, a young wolf with shaking hands. "Silver blade," Thorn said. "Laced. Deep puncture. Right flank." The healer looked up, pale. "We'll need more than poultices. We need to drain it before it roots." "Then do it." Thorn didn't leave her side. Not when they cleaned the wound, not when she cried out through her fever, not when her fingers curled into the edge of the furs like she was fighting death itself. He sat beside her bed for hours, listened to her heartbeat falter, then fight. Listened to the pups press against the door and whimper quietly. He didn't blink, didn't breathe right. He just waited. By nightfall, the fever broke, but the pain had left its mark. Rhea woke to flickering light and hushed whispers. And him, sitting beside her with blood on his sleeves, cloak discarded, jaw clenched. "You came," she croaked. He leaned forward. "They tried to kill you." "I know." "Do you know who?" She closed her eyes. Not their face, but their scent. She's been near you, recently. Thorn stood. He already knew. Isolde. Of course it was her. He left the room in silence. Didn't roar. Didn't call a guard. Just walked. Straight into the Luna's wing, shoving open the silver doors with a force that cracked the hinges. She was waiting, as if she'd known he'd come. She sat at the vanity, brushing her hair. Calm. Regal. Fake. "You sent the assassin," Thorn said coldly. Isolde didn't look away from her reflection. "I sent nothing. She almost died. She was leaving. She was bonded." Isolde turned. "For now." He stepped forward. Her hand twitched. A blade flashed under the sleeve of her robe. Thin, ceremonial. Just enough to nick the throat of anyone who got too close. He stopped. "She is nothing," Isolde said. "No title, no mark, no legacy. Just a woman with a broken past and a bleeding heart. She's more wolf than you've ever been." That landed. Isolde's mouth tightened. "She will divide the pack," she warned. "The elders will fracture. The bloodlines will rebel. Do you really want your children raised in that?" "I want them alive." Silence. Then softer. "Do you love her?" He didn't answer. Didn't need to. Isolde's eyes filled with something like grief, but not for him. For herself. "You were mine," she whispered. "I was never yours," he said quietly. "They gave me to you. That's not the same." That night, Thorn did what no alpha had done in 4 generations. He called for bond annulment. Public, legal, permanent. He stepped into the center of the moonlit hall, tore the crest ring from his hand, and laid it at the feet of the council. "I no longer stand beside Luna Isolde," he said. Gasps echoed. "She ordered the attack. She betrayed the sacred bond, and she's no longer fit to rule beside me." Isolde didn't speak, didn't deny, just stood motionless, pale and regal, as if crumbling inside. And then, without a word, she turned and left the hall, gone, stripped of title, of power, of name. Rhea woke again as the sun rose, and this time, she wasn't alone. The pups were curled beside her, one at her ribs, one across her ankles, one by her throat. Thorn sat nearby, still in the same chair, dark circles under his eyes. "What happened?" she rasped. His voice was quiet. "She's gone." Rhea blinked slowly. "You banished her?" "She left." "And the council?" "They stood with me." She didn't speak for a long time. Then, "What now?" Thorn stood, walked toward the bed, and sank to one knee beside her. "I don't want a Luna the council gave me," he said. "I want the one fate chose." Her breath caught. He reached for her hand. "I want the one my children chose." She trembled. "Say it," she whispered. His hand closed around hers. "I choose you." But outside the chamber, beneath the old stone walls, a different kind of whisper had begun. "Because wolves may follow a king, but not all of them bow to love." She was gone again. Only this time, it wasn't blood on the snow. It was her choice. Rhea left before dawn without warning. Thorn found the note an hour later, folded on the nursery cradle, pressed beneath a piece of river stone. "I need air. I need space. I'll be back. Don't follow me." He stood there reading it again and again, not moving, not speaking. The pups slept quietly, not restless this time, not howling, almost like they trusted her to return. But he didn't. Not yet. Because the last time she left, someone tried to kill her. And this time, someone might not miss. Rhea walked deep into the hills above the eastern cliffs, boots skimming frost-glazed stone. The wind bit her cheeks. Her cloak snapped behind her, too thin for the elevation, but she didn't care. She needed to breathe, needed to think without eyes watching her, without children clinging to her heartbeat, without Thorn staring at her like she was the only thing keeping him upright. Because she was tired, so tired, of proving herself, of defending love like it was a crime, of wondering when the next whisper would become a threat. She sat on a wide, flat rock that overlooked the world, pines below, the river winding like a vein across the snow-covered valley. Far in the distance, the den, just a dot against the trees. Her hands shook, not from cold, from everything she hadn't said. You're a mother now. You're the Alpha's bond. You're safe. But none of those things felt real yet, because somewhere inside she was still the girl who had been thrown out for a lie. Still the woman who heard council doors slam behind her and didn't fight hard enough to stay. She hadn't run this time, but she hadn't truly stayed either. Not fully. Not yet. She wasn't alone for long. She felt him before she heard him. Footsteps. Steady. Controlled. Not close. Not threatening. Just there. Thorn didn't speak as he approached. He didn't scold her for leaving, didn't demand she explain. He just stood beside her, cloak wrapped over his shoulder, jaw tight against the wind. "I asked you not to follow me," she said softly. "I didn't." She looked up. He wasn't looking at her. He was watching the valley. "I felt you." Rhea's heart ached at that, because she'd felt him too. The second she stepped over the border of the den, something in her pulse had tugged. Not panic, not dread, just him. Like the bond had grown roots in her chest and couldn't be pulled out. "You're angry," she said. "No," he said. "You're hurt." "Yes." Silence stretched between them, heavy and real. Then, "I needed to know if it was real," she said. "What we have, what this is, or if it's just instinct, pups, pressure." He didn't react, and that hurt more than yelling would have. "I didn't run," she whispered. "I just had to test the chain." She looked at him sharply. Thorn finally turned toward her. His eyes burned, not with rage, but with grief. "I get it," he said. "You were caged, lied about, thrown to the snow like your life didn't matter." He paused. "Why should you trust that this time is different?" Her breath hitched. He stepped closer. "But I need you to hear me now," he said. "Not as Alpha, not as their father, not even as the man who failed you before." She stared up at him. "I am not building a cage," he said, voice low. "I'm offering you shelter." Her lip trembled. "And if I fall apart inside it?" she asked. "Then we rebuild it." His voice cracked there. "Together." A long silence. Just the wind. Then she stepped forward, one small movement, and let her forehead rest against his chest. Thorn exhaled like he'd been holding that breath for days. His arms came around her slowly, reverently. "I'm scared," she whispered. "So am I." "Then why does it still feel like the world's watching?" "Because they are." He pulled back enough to meet her gaze. "But I don't care anymore." She laughed, quiet, bitter. "You say that now." "No," he said, brushing a piece of hair from her face. "I say it forever." He bent his head, and when his lips met hers, it wasn't desperate. It wasn't explosive. It was anchored, like a vow spoken without words, like a thread pulled tight between two halves of the same storm. Her hands curled into his coat. His mouth moved slow over hers. Not claiming, not demanding, just knowing. And when they broke apart, breathless but still holding on, the cold didn't seem quite as sharp anymore. The cliffs, the valley, the rumors, the fear. It all faded, just for a moment, but neither of them saw the glint of movement in the trees below, or the shape shifting fast through the shadows, because love had drawn them into shelter, and something darker had followed them there. The first arrow split the silence. Thorn shoved Rhea down just before it struck, the tip embedding in the rock beside her head. A whisper of iron, the scent of poison. Another arrow flew. Then another. He shifted mid-motion, bones cracking, fur bristling, his massive wolf form covering her body as 4 shadows burst from the trees. Black-cloaked, fast, silent, armed, assassins, not rogues, pack-trained. He tore into the first one before they could draw a second blade. Blood sprayed across the snow. A scream followed, short and muffled. Rhea scrambled behind the outcrop, clutching her side. Still weak, but not broken. She was done being hunted. The second attacker lunged at her from above. She rolled sideways, grabbed the rock he'd stepped on, and smashed it into his face with a cry that sounded more feral than human. He went down. Thorn caught the third mid-pounce, ripping his throat out in a flash of claws and muscle. The last one, the smallest, hesitated. That was their mistake. Rhea reached up, grabbed the dagger from the dead man's belt and flung it without thinking. It hit the shoulder, not the heart. But it was enough. They dropped. It was over in seconds. Snow churned red around them. Steam rose from bodies. No more movement. No more breath. Only the quiet pulse of survival in the air between them. Thorn shifted back, panting hard. His skin was streaked in blood. Not his. He looked at her. She was crouched behind the stone, bruised and wild-eyed. Her hands were shaking. He rushed to her. She didn't cry, didn't speak. She just fell against him and he caught her. Back at the den, the gates slammed shut the moment they entered. Fenric took one look at their blood-stained clothes and barked orders. Patrols doubled. Warriors dispatched. No one in or out without direct command. Rhea was rushed to the inner wing. Thorn followed. He didn't speak until she was clean and bandaged and warm again, sitting upright with a steaming bowl she barely touched. They weren't rogues, he said. She nodded. I smelled it too. He paced. Same blade metal as the first attack. Same cloak. They knew where I'd go. You were followed before you left. Tracked by one of them. Maybe more. He stopped, jaw clenched. We need to find out who's still loyal to her. Rhea set the untouched bowl down. It's not just loyalty. This is about fear. About keeping the old order alive. Then we burn the order down! His voice shook with rage, but she reached out and stilled him with just a look. We can't lead with vengeance, she whispered. Not if we want to survive this with more than blood. He knelt beside her again, the way he always did now. Like his soul came to ground where she sat. You almost died, he whispered. Again. But I didn't. They want to silence what you are to them. Then we speak louder. He looked at her. She reached up, fingers brushing his cheek. I never thought I'd find a home again. You didn't, he said softly. You became it. She swallowed the lump in her throat. Say it again. He smiled, faint but real. You're not the exile anymore. You're their bond. Their mother. My mate. She blinked hard. No ceremony? He leaned in, lips brushing her ear. You think I need a council circle to know you're mine? Her breath hitched, and still, the fear didn't leave her eyes. They'll come again. Let them. They'll try to take the pups. They'll have to go through me. Through us. she corrected. Thorn nodded. There was no war horn, no blood oath, no public marking yet. But in that room, wrapped in firelight and silence, something deeper was sealed. Not just a bond, a future. Later that night, the pups stirred, restless, whimpering. Rhea cradled them in her arms, rocking softly. Thorn watched from the doorway, bare-chested, silent, tired to the bone, but at peace for the first time in weeks. She looked at him and nodded. "We tell them tomorrow," she said. "The truth. All of it? All of it." And outside, just beyond the den walls, the snow kept falling. But this time, it wasn't hiding blood. It was burying what was dead and clearing the way for what had survived.